Because, we're told the drug takes you over. If you were given an infinite supply, you'd keep taking it forever. What's going on? And she looked at me like I was stupid, and she said, well, their lives get better. And as your life gets better, you don't want to be anaesthetized so much. And it seems almost childishly obvious, and yet this is what you find everywhere. Places that have drug policies based on making the lives of addicts worse get worse problems. The problem deteriorates. It's what's happening in Norway. And places that have policies based on making the lives of addicts better see that problem reduce. It's not a magic bullet. There are still problems in Switzerland. There are still problems in Portugal. This is a human malady you find everywhere. But they have massively reduced the problems. And I think that holds a real lesson. And I think it tells us, I could talk also, if you like, you can ask me about it. The question is one about Colorado, where they've legalized cannabis, about Uruguay, where I went, where they've legalized cannabis. Fully legalized, they're about to do it in Canada. I was just in Canada, they're about to fully legalize cannabis in Canada. I can talk about experiments in heroin legalization in Britain as well, which had incredible results. Everywhere I went where they've moved beyond the war on drugs, there was a familiar pattern. It's super controversial at first, and then people see the results, and it becomes significantly popular. You see this in Colorado. 55% of people voted in Colorado to legalize cannabis. Since they've seen it in practice, 70% of people support it. The governor, John Hickenlooper, who was really opposed to it, now says it works really well and it's a good idea. And I think this helps, all of this overarching thing, just as a final thing, helps us to understand why what's happening in Norway, the bit that's working and the bit that's not. So you have very low drug use and relatively low levels of addiction in Norway. The reason is because you have a brilliant society and a brilliant welfare state, right? You have a society, it's one of the things I most admire in the world. You have a society dedicated to not leaving people behind. Like I said, I was just in Halden prison. Some of the people there have done the worst things you can imagine. And even with them, there was a deep commitment in Norway that I really admired to say, you're not finished. We want you to be better people. That's an extraordinary thing. And that is why you have these overall really good results. It's not because of your drug policies, it's because of your social policies in your society. Now, the reason you have terrible death rates for your addicts is because for the small minority that do develop problems, often due to terrible trauma or being very socially isolated, and always because they're in deep psychological pain, you punish them really harshly. You shame them, you stigmatize them, and you don't even provide, in a lot of places, the things that have been proven to save people's lives, like heroin and methadone prescription. So, you have low use because you have a great society, and you have high death because you have a shitty drug policy. And, I just want to remind you that one fact which should be shameful to everyone in Norway, that drug users here are 30 times more likely to die than drug users in Portugal, where they've decriminalised all drugs. And there are lots of simple things, in terms of small things that you can do to get the dynamic going, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm here, is because I'm so thrilled by the nascent drug reform movement in Norway, and I really admire the work you guys are doing. And it's really important. There's low-hanging fruit here. I know that talking about legalising drugs in Norway is a very distant prospect. Talking about it in Scandinavia, when you have a drug minister who thinks that 40 people can die in a day of cannabis overdoses. We're very, very far from a sensible conversation. But there are small things. I want to give you one example. When I spoke to drug addicts in Oslo, one of the reasons you have a high death rate is if you're with someone who's using drugs and they start to overdose, people are really frightened to call the police, because the police will come and arrest them. The police could, and really punish them, right? So this is a catastrophe, because it means that if you're with an overdosing person, people delay in calling an ambulance. They often take them somewhere and leave the body and then go away and call an ambulance. Or often they just try their own kind of homemade solutions, which obviously are not medical care, right? There's a really simple way to solve that problem. They did it in New Jersey, and it massively reduced the death toll. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. You just issue a legal guarantee. If you're with someone who's overdosing and you call an ambulance, we won't check you for drugs. Really simple, really easy, and it massively reduces the death rate. That one thing on its own. And there are several reasons it's worth arguing for that. Firstly, because it saves a huge number of people's lives. But secondly, let's draw out the people who support the drug war for what they really think. Because when this was proposed in Florida, for example, you had a lot of Republican congressmen who said, well, do we want them to live? And I think that, it tells you something. The only basis on which you could oppose a Good Samaritan law is if you think it's a good thing for drug addicts to die as a warning to other people, or just because you think they're better off dead anyway, right? So let's draw them out. If there's anyone in Norway who thinks that, and I doubt it, let's draw them out. This is something where you guys, Norway is an incredibly democratic society. Citizens can persuade each other. You could achieve a Good Samaritan policy in a very short period of time, and that would bring down the scandalous death rate among drug addicts in Norway.